Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to the show, y'all. I heard him before I saw him. Footsteps trying to be polite to a floor that never did anybody a favor. The Tia was doing his usual evening sermon, Vince coughing, somebody's radio somewhere between stations, dominoes clicking like little bones in a bag, when the door buzzed and the CO announced a name like it might change the room's temperature. Henderson, he said, bored, the kind of bored that still carries a badge. You with Baker? They pushed a kid into my doorway with a state duffel, the strap biting his shoulder, eyes still wet with the idea that this could all be a misunderstanding. He said, I'm Trey, in a voice that was trying to stop shaking by pretending not to notice itself. I told him, I'm Joe, and let the silence decide if we were going to be neighbors or if I was about to become a witness again. He unpacked like somebody raised him with rules, shirts folded with corners, socks paired like they'd taken vows, toothpaste standing at attention like a recruit, tidy like he thought order could keep chaos from sniffing him out. Tidy don't last in here. The unit eats tidy first. He didn't sleep that first night. I could hear the paper pages of his Bible flipping slow, like maybe the salvation he needed was stuck between Psalms and Proverbs, waiting to be shaken loose. I said from the top bunk, maps work better than miracles on this side of the fence. He said, yes, sir. And I winced because sir sticks out in here like clean shoes in the mud. We lay there listening to the building breathe. And right when I figured the quiet was settled enough to be called sleep, he said the sentence that starts this story whether I wanted to or not. My brother's gonna look out for me. I didn't ask who. And here you learn more from the second thing a man volunteers than from the first. He said it anyway. Darius Henderson. The way his mouth held that name told me he'd been practicing it since county, rolling it around like a lucky coin. Now, I ain't in the business of being impressed, but street names carry weather, and that one came with thunder in the forecast. I told him soft, careful with that. Names like that draw flies and favors. He nodded like he heard me, but new ears always hear hope first. Word don't walk in prison. It sprints like it owes rent. By the end of the week, everybody from the microwave line to the laundry room knew the new kid's last name and had an opinion about what it could buy. That's when Calvin Reese drifted into the frame like a rumor in comfortable shoes. Old head. Been down since beepers had sermons and payphones had alibis. Smile that practiced friendly, eyes that counted receipts, and a habit. One of those loud, needy ones that schedules your calendar for you. He slid into our doorway after count with a grin that had already signed papers. Young Henderson, he said like he'd known the boy since elementary. You want the map or you want to find the potholes one ankle at a time? Trey looked over at me. I shrugged. I don't sponsor in here. I observed. Calvin went to work like a coach passing out jerseys, sat beside Trey in the day room and translated the unit like it was a foreign language. Don't sit there. That's Marcus Hill's board. If Antoine Banks says he's good for a stamp, he is. Don't run with Wesley Grant after lunch. He attracts shakedowns like pigeons. He did it smooth and generous, and Trey soaked it up because attention feels like safety when you got no home field. Thing is, in here, mentorship is just a word people sew over the word grooming so it looks less hungry. Calvin started small, slid Trey a soup on Canteen Light Week, a honey bun, 2 stamps for moms, and a squeezed bottle of lotion that didn't smell like all the crying had been boiled out of it. That bought him time to circle back for the first favor. Lil bro, grab me a shot of coffee off your line. And then the second, hey, you hear from your people? Everything straight? And then the third, your brother, he's the kind who makes sure his family don't starve, right? Trey wasn't a liar. He was worse. He was honest when honesty brings wolves to the porch. Yeah, he looked out, he said, and I could see hunger flex in Calvin's jaw like a muscle that'd been waiting on that rep. By week 3, Trey told the whole table really, that a couple of hundred hit his books monthly, like a clock he didn't set but like waking up to. Calvin heard that and got new posture, like money had just called him by his first name. The pitch came a day later, rolled up tight in a voice that sounded like experience in a suit. Look, lil homie, Calvin said, I got a little line that needs an outside line. Nothing heavy. Real simple rinse. Money goes out, comes back clean. Your brother don't even need to touch it direct. One of his folks called this number. We bless the God with lunch money. Everybody sleep good. He said it with kindness, the way a wolf smiles when it puts on mittens. Trey asked the right question with the wrong tone. Why me? Calvin went soft focus. Because I ain't asking you. I'm asking for you. There's a sentence that ruins rooms. Trey wanted to be worth being asked for. He nodded like a boy rehearsing being a man. I didn't say no right there. Sometimes a no too early only teaches a stubborn heart to hide while it goes looking anyway. 2 weeks later, a birthday card walked in on legs addressed to nobody's aunt with 5 crisp hundreds inside, folded in the kind of confidence that likes to be caught. Calvin carried it back to the unit like he'd just been blessed by the weather. He spent half on a long nap he had to purchase with powder and the rest on debts that had learned his name too well. When his high wore off, he didn't look refreshed. He looked rearranged, like the furniture in his head had been pushed against the wrong walls. The habit started steering him, and he started steering Trey. Run this kite to Dominique Parker. Tell Dre Williams the Tuesday thing is a Thursday for now. Hold my seat. Count my winnings. I'll pay you back on commissary. Trey became 2 things at once, student and mule. That's how abuse likes to work. Gives you a job title and an errand at the same time. So you confuse servitude for responsibility. I tried to bend the track before the train came. Told Trey, over-dented chow and coffee, you gotta fight to call coffee. He ain't teaching you. He's spending you. Trey answered with faith so loud it made his words shake. Now, Joe. He look out for me. He like a father figure. I said, then he's a father with a meter, 'cause he only show up when the price is right. He looked away and studied the cinder block like it had a multiple choice test he could still pass. It didn't take long for the angle to get uglier. Calvin needed Tuesday on Monday and Monday on Sunday. When No tried on his shoes, Calvin slapped it back into the closet. Not full-on beatings, just the kind of small violences men use to turn other men into furniture. A shove at the phone, a cuff to the back of the head near the microwave, a finger jammed into the chest, 2 inches of personal air stolen and resold with interest. He praised Trey in public, my little soldier, my right hand, then break him in private. You ain't nothing without me. That's the kind of weather that rots a man's frame from the inside. He took a real swing after a late count by the showers, smacked cracked off tile and sat in everybody's ears like a sermon nobody asked for. Trey didn't swing back. Shame locks a man's elbows. That's his favorite trick. He walked to the sink, washed his face with water that didn't owe him mercy, and came back to the bunk with his Bible open to nowhere. I asked, quiet, "You good?" And he said, "I'm straight." The way glass says it right before it breaks. News has wings in here, but it also has drivers. Raven Mitchell, who moves stamps like hope and hope like stamps, carried portions to the right ears on the right tiers. One of those ears belonged to Darius Henderson, not in here, but close enough to reach through people who know how to keep a phone from falling out of a pocket. The message that came back wasn't poetry. It was an invoice. Somebody told Calvin's body he owed a tax. He heard it. You could tell by the way his jokes started pointing at other people's shoes instead of their faces. His smile tried to practice being humble and kept forgetting the steps. Still, the habit didn't care. Habits don't negotiate. They set the table, eat the silverware, then ask what's for dessert. One night, a kite slid under our door that read like a traffic sign, kitchen hall. After last Trey. I told Trey, we don't answer with feet, we answer with witnesses, and posted Wesley Grant and Antoine Banks at the right dead angle where the camera blinks like it's allergic to seeing. Two silhouettes peeled off the cinder block when we approached, funeral home polite. Not about you, OG, one said to me. Then it's about me because he's with me, I said, bored as a Tuesday, just to make sure boredom did the talking. Wesley slipped, sent a ribbon of shampoo across tile like a prayer suddenly answered. Antoine slipped harder. The sergeant came in hot, and both silhouettes got written up for standing near a plane they didn't have time to deny. Bought us days, not safety. Calvin switched to smear mode, whispering that Trey was making the block sloppy. Sloppy is the one word that can get you more enemies than a debt. Mail came like it always does, thin envelopes trying to look fat. The CO tossed one at Trey. It landed like it weighed more than paper. Inside was a photograph, two boys on a porch in the summer that had already forgiven them for everything. Trey and Darius in plastic chairs, barbecue stained like a badge, smiles that thought the future had a lease in their names. Somebody had sliced the picture corner to corner and taped it back crooked. Tape speaks louder than paragraphs. He's telling me I ain't the picture I think I am, Trey said, voice smaller than he wanted. He's telling you he edits, I told him. Shakedown hit our cell that afternoon because the universe likes to put its foot on your chest while it asks if you're breathing fine. A CO held the photo up and asked, "That's your family?" And Trey said, "Yes." And the CO asked, "You love them?" And he said, "Not like this." And the CO dropped it like paper can bruise. Phone day brought a special, which is just how the desk says the street would like the last word. Trey picked up and said nothing. Whoever was on the other end did all the talking. I watched the words move across Trey's face like heat through glass. He said three things before he hung up. "Yeah, I understand. Okay." Back in the cell, he sat forward, elbows to knees, hands knit like he was praying the floor would stay where it was. He put me on distance. He said 90 days, no calls, no favors, prove I can clean my own mess. He laughed once, a sound that didn't live long. "I ain't the mess." I said, "Doesn't matter. He just told you the rules of his weather." That night, he peeled the tape off the photo, pressed the halves together, and when they didn't stick, he slid one half into Isaiah and the other into James, two testaments apart in the same book, close enough to remember, far enough to argue. "Distance," he whispered, like a job title. Calvin tried to make a public show of philosophy the next day, posted under the TV with a coffee he couldn't afford to sip. "Funny thing about family," he announced to the sports anchor. "They say I got you and mean I got you." I stepped into his frame and said, "You still owe gravity, Calvin." He grinned, then coughed a little victory into his palm. "Your little brother project ain't untouchable, OG." "Neither are you," I said. Silence did the math for us. He looked away first. It didn't solve anything, but it put one bead on the right side of the abacus. The unit manager called Trey to the office. Coffee smell, fighting paperwork like it had a chance. "You got family in the community who love you?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "People in here who want you safe?" she asked. He looked at me like a comma. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded like she believed all of it and none of it. "Stay out of blind spots," she said. "Don't make me write letters with your name at the top." On the tier, he asked, "What's that mean?" "Means she heard thunder," I said, "and she'd rather not meet lightning." Night fell loud and slow. Somebody tapped on the pipe, 4 beats, pause, 4 beats, a code from a different decade that wasn't for us but still made the walls pay attention. I told Trey, not every invitation is a door. Some are traps that look like doors practiced smiling. He nodded without answering, which is sometimes the bravest form of agreement a man can afford. The next morning, I watched the smallest geography change in the day room. Calvin Reese moved from his spot under the TV to a seat near the trash can. In here, politics is measured in inches. Men stopped asking him for the time. Men stopped believing he knew what the time meant. He tried to start 3 different conversations, couldn't finish one. That's how a fall really looks. Less crash, more chipping. He drifted by our door after lights out and said, just loud enough for the vent in my patience, "I ain't your villain." Trey didn't turn. "You ain't my story either," he said, and the hallway swallowed the sentence like medicine it didn't order. Chapel on Sunday was crowded with men who were there to sing and men who were there to be seen singing and men who were there because sitting in a different room is a break, and that kind of break is still a break. Chaplain preached the prodigal and got to the part where the older brother sulks in the yard, and he said into the mic, "Some of us are angry we never got asked to come home." I watched Trey's jaw work, breath steady, eyes on the stained ceiling like he was reading a map written in leaks. On the way out, Raven Mitchell whispered past him, "Heard 90 days can shorten if you cooperate." Trey didn't blink. "I ain't applying for early release from myself," he said, and kept walking with his hands empty like a point. Days stacked. Trey stopped checking the phones, message enough. He learned the art of small no's. "No, I'm not carrying your tray. No, I'm not saving your seat. No, I don't loan forks. No, I'm busy being alive." He held doors for Terrence Monroe and the other old heads, not to be liked, but to practice being a man who could still choose something. Terrence stopped him once and asked, "You got your daddy's patience?" And Trey said, "Never met him." And Terrence nodded like that was already the answer. "Then learn your own," he said. "It's the only one you can keep." One night, an envelope came back through the slot addressed to Trey Henderson, his own handwriting, his own stamp, his own dare. He opened it on the bunk inside the commissary slip with those block letters, "Debt settled, keep walking." He laid the 2 photo halves side by side on the blanket, not touching, 2 islands with the same weather, and nodded like a man signing a truce with himself. I didn't say nothing. Some ceremonies only need witnesses. The yard that week smelled like cut grass ghosts and old sweat. We walked the fence line at a pace that said we weren't escaping anything except rust. Darrell Lowe lifted a palm as we passed, OG voice that could sand wood. "Young Henderson," he called, you get your own orbit yet?" Trey smiled small. "Working on gravity," he said, and Darrell closed his eyes like he was praying to the laws that actually answer. Everything would have held maybe if the habit had decided to take a holiday. But hunger is an alarm that never loses batteries. Calvin started pacing the corners again, asking for change with a sentence that ended in just this once. He made the mistake of touching Trey at the phone, poked him in the chest with 2 fingers like a brand. I stood up inside the air between them and said, "Not across this threshold." He weighed his ribs against his pride and chose to keep the ones the doctor recognized. "No quarrel with you, OG," he said, retreating 1 inch at a time. "Household business." "Pick another house," I told him, and the room agreed by staying quiet. That should have been cool and rain. Instead, it was a forecast. After last count, the lights flickered. The building does that sometimes like it's winking at a bad joke. And a shadow moved across the mop closet in a way that made the walls pay attention. The alarm didn't scream, it groaned. When the COs came running, they slid to a halt like they'd just been told the ground had a name. Calvin Reese was on the floor, blood singing, a short, ugly metal thing on tile humming like regret in a language we all know by memory. They dragged Trey out in cuffs with eyes that had learned how to stare without seeing, whispering something that sounded like apology and relief mixed into a medicine that might kill you either way. They say investigations are about truth. In here, investigations are about paperwork and the weather. Folks asked me what I saw. I told them what I could live with. I told them I saw a boy who had been made into a problem by a man who called himself a solution. I told them I saw the price of a habit crashed into the interest of a reputation. I told them I saw the unit do what units do, pretend it didn't hear the sermon when the preacher wasn't wearing the right uniform. They nodded and wrote down different sentences than the ones I handed them. They sealed off the mop closet hallway with that yellow tape they pull out like a prayer they don't mean. Gauls stomped through the unit heavy, radios screaming like jealous lovers. We were locked down before midnight, everybody sitting on their bunks pretending they hadn't heard the soundtrack of somebody's last breath. I sat there with my back to the wall and that hum still inside my ribs, wondering if mercy ever visits the wrong cell on purpose. They pulled Trey to segregation. No cuffs on his ankles, just wrists, like the system thought it was sparing him one more indignity. He looked through me on the way out. Eyes not wet, not dry, just tired of trying to decide which made more sense. When the door clanged shut, the echo said what nobody else could. Every good intention turns criminal if you wait long enough. Morning count felt slower. Men spoke softer, like the air might tell on them. Nobody said Calvin's name, but the smell of bleach came through the vents, that cold reminder that even blood has to clock out. A CO slid breakfast through the flap and said, "You his Cellie?" I said, "I was." And he just nodded, half sympathy, half paperwork. The gossip train burned diesel that day. Half the tears swore Trey confessed. The other half said the street sent a kite and somebody else swung the metal. Truth though, truth ain't popular in here, it's just expensive. And no one wants to pay in full. By the time they lifted lockdown, the unit felt different. Loud, quieter. Even the gamblers rolled dice soft like the cubes might break the peace treaty. I kept seeing the kids' Bible on the bunk, still open to the torn photograph. Two halves that used to mean before. Now they just meant was. Weeks later, they shipped him. Rumor said another facility, medium high, closer to Atlanta. No one wrote. No one visited. He became one more ghost we talk about like weather. Remember Lil Henderson? Yeah, wild story. That's how memory works in here. It don't mourn, it catalogs. I told myself I wasn't responsible, that I warned him, that men make their own storms. But some nights, when the vents whisper like the past trying out new excuses, I hear his voice saying, he's like a father figure. And I see how the sentence ends now, with a period shaped like a blade. There's a difference between surviving and finishing your sentence. Survivors keep walking after the paperwork ends. They carry other people's endings like unpaid debt. That's what I'm doing, carrying. Because in this place, brotherhood, mentorship, loyalty, those are just different masks for the same thief. And sooner or later, they all come collecting. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.